peace. I thank God for praying mothers throughout our nation. But something happens when men pray. Our Lord Jesus Christ instructed us in Luke 18:1, men ought always to pray and not to faint. Oh, if only our men would pray, crime will cease, prosperity will come, revival and restoration will come. Satan and his demons shall be defeated. 7 reasons why men ought always to pray. 1, it is a sign of spiritual life. 2, we ought to pray because there is a personal devil. He comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. But Jesus said, I come that you may have life and have it more abundant. Number 3, abundant provisions are ours. Only ask, for prayer is the safest place in the world. 5, it is the happiest place on earth. 6, the prayer meeting is a powerful meeting, and ye shall receive power, after which the Holy Ghost will come upon you. Why pray? It shall mold us into the image of Christ. What is prayer? Prayer is the key to heaven, but faith unlocks the door. Words are so easily spoken. Prayer without faith is like a boat without oars. How faith? When you speak to the Master. That's all he asks. That's all he asks you for. Prayer is the key to heaven, but faith unlocks the door. Our faith when you speak to the Master, that's all he asks you for prayer is the key to heaven. Faith unlocks the door. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we enter your gates with thanksgiving and into your courts with praise. Just like our faces are different, so are our personal needs and the needs of every constituent represented by honorable leaders. Father, I pray that you will meet them at the point of their needs, individually and collectively. Bless everyone who have the rule over us and keep them near the cross. In Jesus' name, praying the prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray, say, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. When the business of this House suspended, the honorable member for Garden Hills had reserved the floor. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for Garden Hills.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is my honor, the Minister with the responsibility for the Minister of Public Service, for the Ministry of Public Service and National Insurance, to present to this honorable House my contribution to the national budget for the year 2019-2020. I state at the very outset, Mr. Speaker, that Garden Hill supports this budget and thanks the Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance, for an excellent job to date. Speaker, let me begin by thanking the Almighty God for allowing me the privilege to be a member of this honorable House. By way of the great people of the Garden Hills constituency who elected me to serve on their behalf, I salute them and take great pride in fulfilling my duties and representing them in this place. I would also like to thank, Mr. Speaker, the most honorable Prime Minister, who has given me the responsibility for the management and development of the 20,000 public officers and the 600 plus of members and officers of the National Insurance Board. Mr. Speaker, in Garden Hills, we ran a campaign that was based on inspiration and aspiration. We promised that we would do better than the PLP did. We reminded each resident that we were an aspirational people and we deserved much better than we were getting under the PLP. Notwithstanding the state of affairs that we met when we took office, Mr. Speaker, I can say categorically that we made progress, indeed significant progress, and things are improving not only in the Bahamas, but in the constituency of Garden Hills. Today, Mr. Speaker, as we continue to demonstrate that we are doing better, let me just outline to you some simple things that we have done in the Garden Hills constituency to show that we have done better, Mr. Speaker. Let me also state, Mr. Speaker, that we are driven in this party by a clear policy that actually puts people first by investing in them, while at the same time upholding the dignity of each person living in the constituency. That is why our public parks and recreational spaces have been improved so drastically. Just as a few examples, Mr. Speaker, we have resurfaced the basketball court in Garden Hills 1. We have painted the swing sets, the playground equipment, and we are building more benches for individuals to relax while enjoying their public spaces. We are installing lights on the park at Garden Hills number 2, and we will have a fully operational public park in Garden Hills 2 before the end of this year. Mr. Speaker, I remember during my last term, we convinced the government to give us the land in Garden Hills number 2 for the public space. We started the work on the space, but we were kicked out of office. Several months after we left office, Mr. Speaker, the PLP, in their usual way, had a wonderful ceremony announcing that they were going to Garden Hills number 2 Park and they were going to make it a place for everyone in Garden Hills. Mr. Speaker, they came in 2012, left in 2017, and the only thing that they have to show at Garden Hills Park, Mr. Speaker, was 2 signs. One at the southern entrance of the park and the other sign at the northern entrance of the park. But that's the only thing they did to improve the space, the public space in Garden Hills number 2. But they say that they were representing the people. Mr. Speaker, our cleanup campaign has been second to none, and our derelict vehicle removal program is continuing. To date, we've removed over 200 derelict vehicles from our community. Our next target is Bozine Town, and we expect to remove all of the derelict vehicles from the community of Bozine Town before the end of the summer. Mr. Speaker, we held in Garden Hills a job expo for our constituents. In my mind, that is the most impressive event that I've ever done in the community. More than 120 individuals attended that expo. Young people looking for jobs and opportunities. They presented their resumes, they expressed their interest, and Mr. Speaker, I can report that already more than half of them have received jobs or jobs are available to them in the pipeline. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make mention of the 8 young men who attended the expo. I made a public commitment to these young men that every one of them would get a job. Mr. Speaker, today I stand by that commitment, and we will deliver on that promise to these young men. I mention the young men because the expo was held on a Saturday morning, and they could have done anything. They did not have to attend that expo, but they were interested, Mr. Speaker, in improving their state in life. They were interested in delivering and doing better in their community. And so, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding my commitment to the young men, I also reminded the young ladies attending the workshop that they too will be looked at and dealt with in a reasonable fashion. But I was particularly attracted, Mr. Speaker, to the fact that notwithstanding what we say about young men in our community, these men came out, they demonstrated a willingness to offer themselves and to find opportunities in the community. Mr. Speaker, this summer, as usual, we will have our 2-week summer school program at the S.C. McPherson Junior High School for students in the Garden Hills constituency. We will offer the normal subjects, including English language, math, and cultural studies. We will be making and pasting Junkanoo costumes and doing straw work during the summer program. I thank the AIC in advance for assisting the Garden Hills community in this project. In addition to the summer school, Mr. Speaker, we have added this year a tennis camp so that we can find the next Leo Rose, Mark Knowles, or even, because Garden Hills is so diverse, the next John McEnroe. We expect to find them, Mr. Speaker, and we will provide them an opportunity at a tennis camp in Garden Hills constituency. I urge each community member to take this opportunity to sign up for these programs. They can sign up directly at my headquarters or call my office at 341-6321. Mr. Speaker, since I came to office, I've always been speaking about the Beauseant Town constituency. I just want to say to Beauseant Town that we are working assiduously to remedy their problem, and soon I'm advised that the whole land issue in Beauseant Town will be fully addressed. Mr. Speaker, work in our communities is so important. And that's why I say, Mr. Speaker, that I not only live in my community and work in my community, but I expect and constantly demand that they get the best of service from me and from this government. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my report on the performance and the expectations of the ministry that I lead, the Ministry of Public Service and National Insurance, I would like to briefly just respond to 2 issues that were raised in the media about my ministry by members of the PLP. First issue, Mr. Speaker, was raised by Senator Fred Mitchell. And I hasten to note, Mr. Speaker, I have not seen the papers this morning, but I saw in one of our groups that Senator Mitchell is once again speaking about the National Empowerment and Employment Program. And in his words, the government just dismissed and sent everybody home. Mr. Speaker, I know that you said in this place that using the word lie is unacceptable. So I would not say that Senator Mitchell is a liar. I would not say that in this place, Mr. Speaker. I would not attempt to use that word in this place, Mr. Speaker. So I'm just going to say that Senator Mitchell was speaking the opposite of truth, Mr. Speaker. He was just saying that, and I saw it in the papers this morning. So let me just say for the record, Mr. Speaker, so that we put in context, so that we put in context what Senator Mitchell said about the 52 weeks program in the media earlier this year. Just to put it in context, Mr. Speaker, the Free National Movement started the 52 weeks program in its response to the world financial crisis crash in 2008. The government, Free National Movement government, invested in the people. In fact, in that program and in many other programs that supplemented the 52 weeks program, the Free National Movement invested $50 million. They invested $50 million, Mr. Speaker, in the Bahamians. The Bahamians who they knew were suffering and who had had some sort of fallout as a result of the crash. In addition to investing in people during the crisis, Mr. Speaker, the Free National Movement took the carefully considered position and invested aggressively in infrastructural development. They invested in improving the roadways, the water system, public docks, playgrounds, and the airports on the Family Island. What became apparent, Mr. Speaker, to all of us was that the PLP was not interested in the development of the people and this investment to improve the quality of life for the people. They criticized the Free National Movement for introducing the program, and they criticized the FNM, for introducing the program that employed 4,000 persons. Their initial response to this massive investment in people was to shut the program down and send 4,000 workers home without any hope or any idea of how they would survive. The PLP simply did not care, as one of my constituents said, about how jobless Bahamians would pay their bills and take care of their families. They said that they had an interest in the people. Further, Mr. Speaker, what is evident if you follow all the newspapers was that the Free National Movement government had to push the PLP very hard to reintroduce the program. And what is even more interesting, Mr. Speaker, is their response. And the spokesman for the PLP at the time was, again, Senator Mitchell, who said that they would have to examine each person, one by one, who was in the program. Well, that's my translation. When he said the government would look at every person in the program on a case-by-case basis if they were going to restart the program. Translated, and the Minister of Education just gave me a real translation. Translated, what that means to me was that they were going to look at every person to see if they supported the PLP before they would make a determination on whether or not they were going to re-engage them in the program. This was extremely evident, Mr. Speaker, that in 2012, when the PLP came to office in May, by June, every single person who was hired in urban renewal was sent home. Every single one. 1 month after they came to office. So I say to my colleague Pine Ridge, don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. Earlier this year, in the news media, Senator Fred Mitchell criticized me for stating the F&M's policy, which was to be guided by performance. We said of the 52 weeks program, Mr. Speaker, that we would re-engage individuals based on their performance. That was not enough. That is not the PLP's way. Loyalty is their way. We said we were performance-driven. Senator Mitchell further criticized me and the Free National Movement when he stated that we were only hiring F&Ms in the program. According to reports, he said that reached him. Again, I would not call the senator a liar because that's unparliamentary.
Honorable member.
Yes. I'm not saying that he's a liar, Mr. Speaker. I would never call a distinguished senator a liar.
I understand
Yes.
what you're saying, and I understand what you're doing.
Mr. Speaker, I could easily say again that he speaks the opposite of truth, Mr. Speaker. He speaks the opposite of the truth. Yes. When he said that we were only hiring F&Ms.
Truth is an absolute defense in any suit.
He should have, Mr. Speaker, in my view.
Absolute defense.
He should have asked his colleagues. He should have asked his colleagues. I believe they would have told him the truth. I know that he knows that we are different. That we don't tell people that we cannot confirm them because they were hired by the PLP. Like former Minister of Education Jerome Fitzgerald told individuals at the Ministry of Education who were hired by the F&M. We don't roll that way like the young people say, Mr. Speaker. We don't say to people that we cannot assist you because you are not a PLP. And we cannot assist you because you did not support us, Mr. Speaker. Every single person in my ministry knows full well that I say to them that we are driven by merit and that we are driven by performance. We have invested in the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker, not PLPs or F&Ms. We look at the next generation as the one that would replace us and those who would make the Bahamas a better place for all of us. We are not driven by petty politics or division like the PLP. We are driven by a desire to deliver the best for our country. We are nationalists, as was described. We are nationalists, as was described by the Member of Parliament for Marco City. Mr. Speaker, Senator Mitchell should have known, and I know that he knows better. He knows that it is a tradition in the F&M that every single member of Parliament be consulted in a program as massive as the 52 weeks program. So last year when we started the program, Mr. Speaker, in keeping with the F&M's tradition, Every single member of Parliament was asked to submit names of individuals who were unemployed, who were living in their constituency. Every single member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
We did that?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Unlike them who did not approach us,
You send your name?
of course,
Did you send your name?
of course. I don't want you to get my good Exoma colleague in this.
That's never been done before. Has that been done before?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mr. Speaker, the Free National Movement is not interested in petty politics. We are building the Bahamas block by block, and this requires the energy and involvement of every single Bahamian working together to build a better Bahamas. And so, Mr. Speaker, we always say in the afternoon, and sometimes we are criticized by our own members who ask us, why do you take that posture? We are not treated that way when we are in opposition. But I say to them, we are the leaders, and the next generation must see that we care, even if it is at a very expensive political price. But we must build the Bahamas. That is why, Mr. Speaker, every single MP contributed to the 52 Weeks program. And I just want Senator Mitchell to know that we are different. He knows that already, Mr. Speaker, and he should not be running to the media with untruths. He should not be trying to convince the Bahamian people in this manner. But perhaps that is in keeping with his style, Mr. Speaker. He did say that he was more interested in the power of the office rather than the people in the office.
Is it power?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The second matter that I would wish to address, Mr. Speaker, before I get to my major contribution, Mr. Speaker, is the appointment of the Commissioner of Corrections, Mr. Charles Murphy. An appointment that the PLP leader and his colleagues suggested that it was political, it was not transparent, it was patently unfair, and they said, therefore, that they were not prepared to support the appointment and authority of the commissioner. Mr. Speaker, that was all over the media.
Strange to you?
All over the media, Mr. Speaker. Commissioner of Corrections at the prison, Mr. Charles Murphy. I want the Bahamian people, though, to be the judge of this process. I will recount to the Bahamian people the appointment of 2 commissioners of correction, one under the Free National Movement and the other under the PLP.
Deal with them. Deal with them.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for the Exomas and Ragged Island on a point of order.
If my recollection serves me right, I believe this matter is before the court, and therefore my friend, the member for Garden Hills, would be so guided.
Mr. Speaker, I'm only talking about the process of the appointment.
Not the case.
I'm not talking about the case. I'm not talking about the case, Mr. Speaker. I'm talking about the involvement and the process of the appointment that is clearly outlined, in the public service,
Not speaking to this particular case.
in the public service.
Process. How it was done.
Oh, you mean, are you telling me that the PLP is challenging the process that's outlined by the Public Service Commission on an appointment? Okay. Mr. Speaker?
Honorable members, just for clarification, so that we can act in an abundance of caution with matters that may be before the court. Honorable member for Exomas and Ragged Island, are you suggesting that the matter of the appointment is before the court in a judicial review?
Mr. Speaker, my recollection is that the matter before the court is an issue that speaks to the process of how the current chief of prison was selected, etc., Mr. Speaker, I have no authority on the issue, but I recall reading in the press or elsewhere some information on it, and I only suggest that the member be so guided, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm guided, and I will be as transparent, as careful as I can. But what I'm speaking to, Mr. Speaker, is something that was put in the public domain by the PLP. The PLP said in the newspapers that they could not support the appointment of Mr. Murphy, and outlined specifically why they could not support the appointment of Mr. Murphy. All I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is since they had the right to speak to the appointment of Mr. Murphy in the public domain, I'm just responding to the article. I'm not responding, I'm only responding to the article that was in the public domain raised by the PLP. And
If they can speak good, why can't he as the minister speak good?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, all I say is, in the case of the appointment that was raised by the PLP, notice was circulated to all prison officers about the vacancy that existed on the post of Commissioner of Corrections. The Ministry of Public Service, on the other hand, advertised the vacancy in the daily newspapers and invited all qualified individuals, all qualified persons to apply for the job.
Honorable member
Yeah.
for Garden Hills.
Yes, sir.
Out of an abundance of caution,
I take your word, Mr.
we
Speaker.
wouldn't want to
I would not
say anything that could prejudice the case. So
I will not speak about Mr. Murphy, Mr. Speaker. I'll withdraw the statement about the appointment of Mr. Murphy. What I will say, though, I will speak about the appointment of Mr. Elliston Raming. Then he was Mr. Raming was another Commissioner of Corrections. He was appointed by the PLP in 2005. Let me put this in context, Mr. Speaker, so that we understand what was taking place. Me and the member for Exoma, our homeboy, Mr. Charles Rule, a veteran prison deputy commissioner, was in the chair after the retirement of Mr. Coleman. Mr. Rule had spent his entire life and his entire career in the prison services. And he rose to the rank of deputy superintendent. In Bahamian terms, Mr. Speaker, when Mr. Coleman retired, Mr. Rule became the chief. He was the man in charge. Suddenly, Mr. Speaker, without notice to anyone in the prison or in the public service, without any ad placed in the media, Mr. Raming was appointed superintendent of the prison, or as it later became prison corrections officer, the chief. Needless to say, Mr. Speaker, every single prison officer was shocked. They did not know that this was going to take place. My cousin could not believe his own eyes, that this was happening right before his own eyes. The only announcement that was made, Mr. Speaker, was made in the media that Mr. Raming was the new man in charge. There was absolutely no outrage, Mr. Speaker. There was absolutely no outrage, Mr. Speaker, from the Member of Parliament for Cat Island or Angliston, both of whom were serving members in the cabinet. No outrage, nothing. There was a man that was made superintendent or Commissioner of Corrections, without any form of advertisement, without any notice to the public, to the prison officers, or the public. No notice, Mr. Speaker. No outrage from the person who was Deputy Prime Minister, who was making all the noise the other day about the appointment that is in place today. None whatsoever, Mr. Speaker. I wonder why, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, when they appointed Mr. Rami, this was their definition of transparency and fairness. This was their definition of what good governance should look like. I asked them today, Mr. Speaker, what has changed? Why are they suggesting that the process that they used was fair and ours was flawed? But, Mr. Speaker, let me continue so that we know exactly what went down today. They went further, Mr. Speaker. When my homeboy and distinguished exhumian, Mr. Roll, retired as Deputy Commissioner at the prison, the PLP, as usual, appointed 2 deputies. Not a single serving officer at the prison knew what was taking place. No ads were placed in the newspapers or circulated in the prison. They simply selected 2 well-connected individuals and made them Deputy Commissioner of Corrections. What is even more egregious, Mr. Speaker, as to what took place, that one of the persons selected, Mr. Speaker, had never served in the prison. Mr. Speaker, and he was allowed to skip 7 posts in the prison. But this was their version of fairness, of transparency. I didn't see any comments in the newspapers when that was done, Mr. Speaker. I did not hear any outrage from the former Deputy Prime Minister or the Member of Parliament for Angliston about unfairness and lack of transparency. But today, Mr. Speaker, their message is about fairness and transparency. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, it was all about the power and not the people. Mr. Speaker, these individuals praise the PLP government for selecting and appointing the right people. The word transparent and fairness was not a part of their lexicon at the time. This was how they did business when they had the opportunity to govern these Bahama Islands. But today, they speak about political interference like something that they pull from under a hat. They speak about the process. But their actions condemn them, Mr. Speaker, because the process they now say would be unfair and is less transparent. Yes, I submit that the process that we're using is different, and it's totally different from them. And perhaps their version of fairness and transparency is the ability for the power man to select his people and not allow a process where everyone has an opportunity to be afforded at least an interview to take place. So I say to the Member of Parliament for Cat Island, who is not here, is that in order to be forgiven, you must first admit that you were wrong. You must first admit to the Bahamian people that you did not govern in an acceptable way according to your own standards today.
Any big PLPs, they don't say that. Big fellas.
You must confess and admit to the people of Mirguana and the residents that you're wrong for criticizing their man, who qualified for the position since 2003. You must also, Mr. Speaker, apologize to the Public Service Commission, who went beyond the normal call of duty in accordance with the PLP. They went and advertised locally and internationally. So any Bahamian living anywhere in the world would have had an opportunity to get the job. And so I say to you, Mr. Speaker, the PLP again went overboard. And in order for us to take them seriously, they must apologize to the Public Service Commission, who is an independent body, who selected the best person based on the qualifications and experience and the leadership experience that was before them. And so, Mr. Speaker, since I can't say very much on that matter, I'd leave that as right there, Mr. Speaker, so that the PLP and the Bahamian people could be the judge, so that the PLP would have an opportunity to apologize to the Public Service Commission, so that the PLP would demonstrate to the Bahamian people that they too did not live up to the standards that they say today is the right way to go. And I await their apology, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker, I only chose to speak on those two matters that were in the public media because it clearly demonstrates the hypocrisy, the lack of a normal standard in governance by the PLP. It shows in those two examples, Mr. Speaker, that the PLP is prepared to say anything so that they can once again attempt to fool the Bahamian public. But the good book says, you will know them by what they do, not by what they say. I say to my good colleague from Pine Ridge again, I think you were speaking to the PLP. I hope they have taken your advice that they must do more than what they say, or at least they should, whatever they say, they should do. Mr. Speaker, before I go to my report again, I need to just offer some unsolicited advice to 2 or 3 other members of the PLP. They don't have to accept my advice, Mr. Speaker, but I freely offer it to them nevertheless. Firstly, to my friend, the Member of Parliament for Angliston, the Honorable Glennis Hannah Martin. And so, Angliston, I urge you to vigorously and unconditionally support the Government Over the Hill initiative. I urge you not to be like former members of the PLP who failed to support this vision when it was advanced several decades ago by your father. Join your friend, the MP for South Andros, who supports the plan. He talks about McCullough Corner every day. And he supports this minister-led initiative that would affect thousands over the hill. Support this, Angliston, because it represents the unfulfilled vision of your father when he proclaimed that he would wipe away the tears from every eye of dispossessed Bahamians, especially those over the hill from Camp Road to Bain and Grantstown. I urge you to remember his vision and his mission. Remember his commitment to the poor and the dispossessed. Remember he introduced urban renewal and his unflinching pledge to eliminate outside toilets from Camp Road to Nassau Street. Remember that he pushed for $5 million in a budget for urban renewal, and all the PLP gave him was $200,000 to start this program in 1975. It is not our fault that this big idea is now becoming a reality under the Minutes-led F&M. So I urge you, Angliston, to support it, to celebrate it, to celebrate with the people of the Bahamas as the F&M will fulfill your father's big dream to wipe the tears from the eyes of every Bahamian. The Prime Minister will take this program off the drawing board. He will take it off the shelf. He will expand it to the largest inner-city innovation and inner-city development in the history of the Bahamas. That is what we do, Mr. Speaker. That is why I beg Angliston to support this project. To not only support it in a heart, but to go out and announce it in a joyful way to all Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, you know the Member of Parliament for Exuma is dear to me, Mr. Speaker. I started my career in his community several years ago. And so, if people say I have a little soft heart towards them, I say to them, we are both Exumians, we want the same thing for Exuma, so I support him wholeheartedly. And so I want to give him some advice too, Mr. Speaker. I want to say to him that don't be trapped by the PLP. Don't let them push you out front to say things that you don't believe. Be the great Exumian that you are. Put country before your party. And you will always do well, Exuma. Think big. Make it happen. We are watching your back. We Exumians will look out for you. But don't let the PLP fool you.
Coming home.
You know, Forbes Hill is I think the first time they ever voted PLP in their life was this last election. I don't even know if, did you win Forbes Hill? Or you won Forbes Hill? Well, Forbes Hill is now you know that's a totally different issue. You know that's a totally different issue. Block Point is unflinching, they unmoved, they're F&M. And we will deliver for them this time. And from Bobby Seminar to now, I just remember. So I want you to continue to pledge to them your support, Exuma. Do your best for Exuma. And you know, Mr. Speaker, this bring me to a point that I think is very important. Notwithstanding that Exuma has voted for the PLP, as members of the F&M, we know about value to our country. And so the largest investment that we propose today really is the investment of the airport in Exuma, an island that is represented by the PLP.
Full employment.
You know, the Free National Movement has done a lot for Exuma. A lot for Exuma. When we wanted to show Exuma our worth, we caused a major hotel to invest in Exuma, and we had to get people from all over the Bahamas to come to Exuma to work. And Exuma has taken off from that time to today. And so, Exuma, I say to you, don't be fooled by the members that you sit with nowadays.
Nowadays?
Sit somewhere else.
I'm not gonna make that comment. I'm gonna leave that alone. All I'm saying to him is,
Bring you back to the board.
don't be fooled. Don't be tricked. You do your best, and don't let them give you the difficult message to take. Find a way for them to take it for themselves. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to commend a member of my own party, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Shannon Don Cartwright, a member of Parliament who has responsibility for beaches and parks and the cleanup of these Bahama lands, this island, Mr. Speaker. I commend him because he's an example of hard work, focus, he's determined, and the Bahamas is clean as a day because of his energy and his effort. And I commend him, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've been blessed my entire life. I thank God that I have a good and supportive family. My children are on track. My family teases me every day about what I can do and what I am not doing. I've been blessed in this career, Mr. Speaker, as a public officer, serving in the Ministry of Education, the Road Traffic Department, and the Ministry of Public Works. I've been given the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to work and support Mr. Ken Russell in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Renewal and the National Insurance Board. And this is the second time, Mr. Speaker, that I've been given some responsibility for the National Insurance Board. And so, Mr. Speaker, I can boast, Mr. Speaker, of having, and I know some other people can get jealous, but I say it nevertheless, of having the best permanent secretary and the best support staff in the government of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was right. The Prime Minister was right. He selected the best permanent secretary and placed the best permanent secretary in a ministry that has responsibility for the human resources of the Bahamas. No, the Prime Minister's not in trouble. That's a sound decision, that you put the person who is best qualified to deal with human resources matter in the ministry that deals with human resources.
Optimizing the use of your resources.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend Ms. Bodie and her staff for doing a wonderful job. Mr. Speaker, I also want to commend Ms. Nicola Virgil Roll, the Director of NIB, for being productive and a staff that helps out the public. I want to commend the board. I see a member sitting in the gallery. It's Jeffrey Pinewood Stewart. As we are commissioned and on track to do our best to deliver quality service to the Bahamian people. In that vein, Mr. Speaker, I turn to the National Insurance Board. Mr. Speaker, the National Insurance Board is one of the pillars of the Bahamas. Indeed, it is a pillar of the Bahamian government. This year, the National Insurance Board will celebrate its 45th anniversary of serving as administrators of the Social Security Program for workers of the Bahamas. Having received its mandate on October 7, 1974, National Insurance has diligently fulfilled its goal, delivering services through 30 offices across the Bahamas, from Grand Bahama to Inagua, to 144,000 employees 14,000 employers and 10,000 self-employed persons. Mr. Speaker, the F&M government has given much attention to the National Insurance Board since it came to office. It is no secret that NIB has been met with many challenges since the implementation of the Insurance Administration Management System, commonly called the V3 system, that was rolled out 3 years ago. As you know, Mr. Speaker, NIB is the Social Security safety net for our people. And for those who contribute to the fund, if you're sick and cannot work, it helps to replace your income. If you're hurt on the job, it pays your medical care. And when you cannot work any longer, it pays you a pension. This said, Mr. Speaker, the success and survival of this organization are matters of concern to every single Bahamian, every single member of Parliament, and every single cabinet minister. Mr. Speaker, the work of the board has been greatly impacted by the poor implementation of the V3 system. And like projects of this size, $14 million of the Bahamian money, there are far-reaching consequences. Decision made while the project was in the delivery stage, they called it rollout or something like that, Mr. Speaker, have created many issues for contribution posting, payment collection, claims processing, data entry speed, inspection, record keeping, and installment agreement processing. In short, Mr. Speaker, when we came to office, NIB was in a state of disorder, confusion, and chaos. I heard that Member of Parliament for Angleton say to the public in her presentation, and she was praising the computerization of NIB. Well, I will talk to you about that computerization and the rollout of that computerization, and you will be the judge of how successful it was and whether or not the Member of Parliament for Angleton should have praised it and put it in the context that it was a wonderful thing. When we came to office, Mr. Speaker, we met NIB running what we call a sizable backlog in many of its units. In the contribution department, dozens of boxes, Mr. Speaker, the banker-sized boxes, as we say, of C10s. And C10s, you will hear me use the word C10s a lot. It really is the contribution forms that are given to NIB. So what we met was dozens and dozens of boxes filled with these contribution C10 forms. These C10 forms were waiting to be digitized so that they could be used in various claims processing. So just keep that in mind. When we came to office, boxes as high as six foot high and all over the place were filled with C10s. What that means, very simply as you will find out, is if you have the C10s or the contribution forms in boxes, then if somebody applied for a claim, if the claim is in the box, it cannot be processed. Therefore, they can't get their claim. That is the state that we met NIB in contribution. The contribution department was overwhelmed, Mr. Speaker, with the amount of C10 data that was reaching NIB electronically that could not be loaded on the system, thus forcing manual data entry. So here's the second problem, Mr. Speaker. First, we had the C10s in the boxes that were stored, and therefore claims could not be processed. Secondly, NIB was supposed to have an electronic portal where a person could send the C10s electronically into NIB, But these C10s could not be uploaded on the system at the time, and so you had these C10s, as was said to me by one NIB staff, they were just in the queue sitting there. The employer self-service web portal, which should have allowed the employers to upload contribution forms and pay them online, was not working and had to be taken down from the website. Stacks of manual receipts were waiting to be entered in the system so that they could be processed electronically. Payments for installment agreements were being posted against future C10s. And so you came there in 2018, 17, for example, you got an installment agreement, and because it could not be posted electronically, it was posted against future C10s. C10s were posted against the future installment agreements. Mr. Speaker, $14 million was spent, and the compliance is mostly a manual process. But at least I want to give the staff credit. They took those C10 forms and neatly placed them in cabinets. They had them neatly placed in boxes, awaiting someone or some group to deliver them. And deliver them we did, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through no fault of their own, compliance staff resorted to keeping installment agreements balances on spreadsheet. Yes, Mr. Speaker. After spending $14 million, they had to manage the installment agreements on Excel balance sheets. NIB, Mr. Speaker, was issuing a large number of manual checks because of the many claims that could not be processed in the system. And often, the claims officers had to rely on the IT department to run scripts outside of the system to update records in order to get the claims completed successfully so that payments could be made. NIB was also having a major performance issue on the system. The system was not functioning, and the staff had a name for it, Mr. Speaker. They sat to their computers, and they simply said that the computer was spinning. This is, Mr. Speaker, this activity of the spinning computer would take approximately 15 minutes to record or to retrieve an update. That's 15 minutes, Mr. Speaker, after spending $14 million. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, the worker at NIB who was trying to retrieve this information for you would lose connection. And then this would repeat itself over and over again. Today, Mr. Speaker, it's down to 4 seconds. Think about that difference, Mr. Speaker. When we came to office, a data entry person at NIB, a computer person at NIB, in processing a claim and putting information in the system would take 15 minutes if they were lucky, if they didn't lose connection. 900 seconds. And 900 seconds. 900 seconds, Mr. Speaker. When we came to office, it's now down to 4 seconds. That is incredible progress, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think the picture is clear as to what NIB faced when we came to office. In my mind, if there was ever a time to protest against the implementation of the V3 system, it could have been in 2016, maybe 2017. But in 2019, Mr. Speaker, to hear people say in 2019 that we are protesting against the V3 system is totally unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. Because when it was implemented by the PLP, and it took 15 minutes if you're lucky, they did not protest. It's now down to 4 seconds, Mr. Speaker. The F&M government did not stick its head in the sand, Mr. Speaker, and run away from the V3 issues we inherited from the PLP. The board firstly approved a project that addressed the stabilization issue. This significant investment was to ensure that focus was brought to bear on these matters. While the ID committee of the board provided oversight and support for the project team, we have made much progress. And we are a responsible and transparent government. And that is why I am reporting to the nation today, telling the Bahamian people what the F&M government has achieved since 2017. Mr. Speaker, in May 2018, we hired 20 temporary workers to digitize the C-10s that were in the boxes and in the cabinets. We could not use V3 for this project, unfortunately. That means the NIB IT team had to build a system to capture this data, then upload it onto the V3. To date, Mr. Speaker, over 223,000 C-10s have been digitized, and more than 144,000 have been posted to employers' accounts. The electronic forms on NIB website has been enhanced and modified to allow employers to digitize their C-10s and submit them to NIB electronically. Thus far, more than 75 of the largest employers are submitting digitized C-10s that are being uploaded and posted to V3 much faster. We have designated the appropriate resources to manage this process and work with these employers. Mr. Speaker, there are further gains to be made. Our work is not yet done. And to realize this, we made headways in subcomponents of the stabilization project to fix and relaunch this portal. To date, we have fixed 9 critical issues that are in the planning phase of a pilot project to relaunch the portal. So, Mr. Speaker, when we next meet, I will report to the Bahamian people on this result. Mr. Speaker, besides, temporary workers have been reassigned to work directly with the Compliance Department to digitize the records stored in the filing cabinets. We're taking the form out of the boxes and out of the filing cabinet. We are putting them on the system. That is progress. This is how we do it. We deliver, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as part of fixing the compliance problem, we are also working on a means to correct the posting of installment agreements against future C-10s. We will no longer need to resort to keeping installment agreement balances on spreadsheet. NIB is no longer issuing large number of manual checks. We're down to about 2 or 3 a month, and the claims are moving through the system clearly. But there are a few issues still being encountered now and again. Mr. Speaker, since the start of the stabilization project, we have fixed over 200 bugs and made 50 enhancements. This was done with as little an impact on the operation of NIB as possible. and we held the vendor accountable for their delivery. We changed the contract, Mr. Speaker, from one of time and material to a fixed-base initiative. This initiative has saved the board hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, when a vendor creates a regression error, they must fix it without any additional cost. What that means, Mr. Speaker, was in the past, when we had errors at NIB, we'd send it to the vendor, and the vendor would charge us based on how much time he invested in fixing the problem. A common occurrence, Mr. Speaker, was that in the past, when you fix one problem and you bring it back to the board, 2 or 3 other problems emerge. And so, we had to go back to the vendor and pay for them to fix these problems that they call regression errors again. We changed that, Mr. Speaker, so that when we give the vendor a task to fix, when it's fixed, if there are regression errors, he must fix them himself. We don't pay the extra for that, Mr. Speaker. That is significant progress, and we have saved the board a considerable amount of money. Mr. Speaker, we have made significant progress at NIB, not only on the technical side, but, Mr. Speaker, in order to respond to our daily challenges and respond to exactly what is going on at NIB, we have put on a claims course. In order to improve the timelines of claims payment and to achieve the desired level of customer satisfaction, NIB is strengthening its cooperation by training additional claim officers. In 2018, the first cadre of officers were commissioned, and a new cohort of officers are being trained as they speak. By adding this additional capacity, the speed by which claims are processed, is expected to go down and improve significantly. Mr. Speaker, we're concerned about our customers. And it cannot be right for a customer to put in a claim in NIB and cannot get results quickly. So our second response, I call it, our first response was, of course, to try to fix the V3 system so that we could get the information on the system. And to respond to customers correctly, we are adding more claims officers so that we are building that capacity so that we can respond to our customers more quickly. And so we expect, Mr. Speaker, within the next few months to see an even greater improvement to our customer service delivery side at NIB, because we will have more claims officers to respond to the customer's need. Mr. Speaker, there's a concern at NIB, and the concern is to self-employed individuals, employers, and others who do not pay for their employees, and sometimes who do not pay NIB for themselves. And I say to these individuals, what I say to these individuals is, NIB is only able to fulfill its mission as an income replacement program that assists payment workers during difficult periods of their lives when employers, workers pay into the funds. These contributions are then invested prudently by NIB to grow the National Insurance Fund. Employers hold an important fiduciary responsibility to remit the contribution and the funds of all employees, whether or not they have deducted it from their salary or not. That's their responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I therefore implore all employers and self-employed persons to become compliant. Not only is it the law, but it is the right thing to do. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, your employees will depend on these funds. Indeed, for self-employed persons, and I'm speaking to the taxi drivers, straw vendors, contractors, the lawyers, and others. And I just want to remind them that nothing is more tragic than having not made contributions than to realize at the age of 65 that there is no retirement benefit at the NIB board for you. Imagine for a moment how daunting that would be to anyone. And so I urge everyone to make their contribution to NIB. NIB has pledged to step up its enforcement effort in 2019-2020. We want to pursue the non-compliant employees, especially those with large arrears. I just want to say that the last look I had at large employees who owed NIB, I think the amount was someplace between $14 million and $17 million owed to NIB by large companies. That $14, $17 million. Imagine that, Mr. Speaker. Think of the number of employees that will not benefit because their employer did not make a contribution to NIB on their behalf. Think about the thousands of ordinary Bahamians whose funds may have been deducted, who was working with the view that their contribution has been paid, only to be told by NIB that the contribution was not received by NIB. Again, I urge individuals in this grouping to go to NIB, to make the arrangements, to do the payment, so that we can all live happily ever after. Mr. Speaker, the Compliance Department of the National Insurance Board plays a pivotal role within the organization. Preliminary unaudited figures show that contribution revenue intake was $283 million for 2018. That may sound like a lot of money. However, when you post that against the benefit payouts by NIB in 2018, which is $292 million, you see the direction upon which we're headed. We collected $283 million, we paid out $292 million in 2018. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are seeking to do other improvements in NIB. Occupational health and safety is one area, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is one area that I still have some issues with. I still do not fully understand. I admit that I don't understand, Mr. Speaker. And I want the Bahamian people to consider what I'm going to say in this vein, Mr. Speaker. As a person, I take out my health insurance. I'm paying the insurance company every month for my health insurance. But I go out and I get injured, and suddenly the health insurance group say to me, "Oh, that's an NIB business. Why are you coming to us?" And so occupational health is paying out a significant amount of money, and we're going to have what one of my staff members said was a come to Jesus moment. We're going to have to make some decisions. Because I believe if I'm paying a health insurance for myself, that health insurance must cover me 24 hours a day. But now we're drawing a fine line. We're saying if you get injured on the job, it's not my problem. Notwithstanding, I'm paying you every month to keep up my health insurance. That is NIB's issues. So, Mr. Speaker, these are things that I'm just speaking out loud. NIB and its technical staff will position itself to address this issue with the Ministry of Health and certainly the Compliance Division of the government to make some determination as to what we're going to do going forward. Since 2016, Mr. Speaker, the medical costs resulting from industrial accident has escalated. The increase in benefit called for a focused attention to ensure that benefits paid are in keeping with the National Insurance Act and regulation. The Occupational Health and Safety Unit that has responsibility for industrial accidents, and there's an industrial accident committee, has initiated the utilization of universally accepted quality care guidelines for the care of claimants who have industrial accidents. These guidelines allows the unit to focus on patients' care along with effective cost containment measures while improving the outcomes of the claimants. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, we're going to have some discussions on occupational health and the whole issue of injury on the job and injury outside the job. The National Prescription Drug Plan, Mr. Speaker, again, which is an FNM initiative, and I just say that in the context that some people continue to say the FNM does not care about the people. And I just announced a few plans by the FNM, including the 52 weeks program, the unemployment assistance program, and now I come to the National Prescription Drug Plan, also introduced by the FNM, all specifically designed to improve the quality of life and standards of the Bahamian people. In 2018, with the implementation of the new drug formulary for the National Prescription Drug Plan, and increased the number of medications covered from 248 in 2017 to 312 for the 16 chronic conditions recognized by the plan. Again, we're increasing the number of medicines that are available to the Bahamian people. And the count is now 312 different medicines for the 16 chronic conditions that the plan represents. What is even more fantastic, Mr. Speaker, is that 31,366 persons, 366 persons in the private and public, from the private and public pharmacies benefit from this prescription drug plan compared to 30,250 in 2017, representing an increase of 3.7%. On prescription drugs, a total of $14.5 million was paid to private pharmacies for medications and supplies, and $342,000 paid for the purchase of medications and supplies provided at the public pharmacy. Imagine that, Mr. Speaker, that the government, this government, through a plan introduced by the Free National Movement government, is spending nearly $15 million. And that is transferred to the Bahamian people in the area of medicine alone. So, on the one hand, the Minister of Health will talk to you about having free care at PMH. And now on this side, same government, we are saying to you that the government is providing you free of charge $15 million worth of medication. That is a program introduced by the Free National Movement. Mr. Speaker, in National Insurance, there are two active construction projects, namely the National Security Building and the Bimini Government Complex. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we are at the advanced stage on each project, and we anticipate that National Security will move into their facility sometime early this year, perhaps as early as August or September. And that in the case of Bimini, they will be available and they will be able to enter their project in early 2020. So, Mr. Speaker, again, projects delivered by NIB. Mr. Speaker, NIB met its contribution budget of $281 million. Investment income approved to a total of $67 million. Benefits expenditure increased to $292 million. Administrative expenses, $51 million. And the reserve of the National Insurance Board is $1.7 billion by the end of the year. Mr. Speaker, National Insurance has an aggressive 5-year strategic plan. The goal of this strategic plan, Mr. Speaker, is towards creating a world-class organization. The plan is built on 4 pillars, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to announce the pillars so that you get a sense of where we're going. Mr. Speaker, first pillar is to maintaining exceptional customer care service. We at NIB, Mr. Speaker, understand the value of customer care and customer service delivery. So that is the first step in our plan, to make sure we have exceptional customer care. Mr. Speaker, our next goal is to develop talent and the motivation of staff. Again, we're investing in human beings. So in our first pillar, we're looking at the customers, making sure that they get the kind of service delivery that they deserve and that is expected of an organization as valuable to us as National Insurance. Then we're looking internally at our staff members and to identifying the talent and then motivating them to progress. We have a responsibility, Mr. Speaker, as outlined in our third pillar, of ensuring the health of the funds for generations to come. So sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you'll hear us talk and you'll hear us speak about the actuarial report which says that the donation to the fund must increase. And every time that is said, you know, we get jumpy. We say, well, we can't introduce that now because we are going through some stress in our community. But think of all the things that National Insurance does for you. And so at some point, we're going to have to carefully consider and sit down and look at how we're going to maintain the National Insurance funds without going up on the cost or asking individuals to contribute a little bit more. And so I urge Bahamians to look at ways in which not only we could save to the funds, but to come to the reality that the funds, the contributions to the funds cannot be the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and so on. at some point we're going to have to come to you and say, listen, in order, if you want to receive the ultimate benefit from NIB, you've got to pay more. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the pillar that is led by the director is improving the governance of NIB. And included in that is the behavior and actions of NIB and how that should take place. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think NIB is on an exceptional wicket. They have a plan to improve not only the quality of life and the standards that we live, but also to look at its internal governance and how we as the employees have to behave, what responsibility we have to the public. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Ms. Virgil Roll and the leaders of NIB for their contribution, for their hard work, for their determination to make NIB the best place and the best Social Security service available not only in the Bahamas, but certainly in the world. And I commend the chairman of the board, Mr. Troy Smith, and his hardworking team for their hard work, and I look forward to working with them and making sure the board succeeds. Speaker, I now turn to the Ministry of Public Service. And I want to say at the very outset, Mr. Speaker, that when I got to work this morning, as for the last week, every time I pull up on the compound, I call on my friends would approach me and say, Mr. Roll, when you speaking? And initially I was trying to figure out why they was asking me when I was speaking. And then last week, Friday, I was reminded that whenever I was speaking, I was to announce how much members' officers would say how much money we can throw on the ground, or how much money we're going to put in the pockets of public officers. I just want to say at the outset that this is a government that is committed, certainly committed to public service, and as you listen to my presentation, you'd know that we are focused, and I just want to say to public officers that we made a commitment to the president of the Public Service Union that he would not hear those numbers in Parliament, that he would hear what we're going to do with public officers and for public officers at the negotiating table. And I'm pleased to announce that we are negotiating in good faith. We are at a good pace to conclude these matters. And once those matters are concluded, the public service will know exactly where they stand and how much money we propose to put in their pockets. But I can't announce it today because negotiations are ongoing. And so as I turn to the Ministry of Public Service, I want to let members know that it is the goal of my ministry to enhance performance of the public service. And I repeat that. The goal is to enhance the performance of the public service. And so, before I go any further, I want just to remind the House that the Ministry of Public Service has responsibility for human resource management and the development of all persons paid from the consolidated funds. Secondly, the payment of pensions and gratuity to persons who have retired, resigned, or whose contracts have expired. We have responsibility for office accommodation for government ministries and departments in New Providence and Grand Bahama. Although sometimes we have to intervene on accommodation matters in other islands, generally speaking, the Ministry of Public Service only have responsibility for accommodations in New Providence and Grand Bahama. The payment of insurance for specific groups of persons, the National Job Creation and Skill Enhancement Program, Public Service Week celebrations and the National Insurance Board, the Public Service Center for Human Resources Development, and we also have some relationship with the Public Service Commission, but the Public Service Commission is an autonomous body. It's an independent body that performs its duties on behalf of the government. And so, Mr. Speaker, I heard a member opposite speak about the fact that there was no plan. There was no plan in place. And so I want to say to them directly that the plan of this government is to build a new public service using the pillars of productivity, efficiency, and employee development. Again, our pillars are very, very simple. We want to see a productive, efficient, fully developed employees, and our major investment in human resources will show our interest in that area. 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker, I presented my first budget as the Minister of Public Service and National Insurance. The first objective was to do the groundwork by investigating the policies and practices which hindered productivity within the ministry. I reported early on the massive backlog of unprocessed matters, the bad practices within the ministry caused by political interference, and the various unpaid commitments left in place by the former administration. Some of the issues were resolved before the start of this fiscal year, 2018-2019. Issues that we fixed, Mr. Speaker, included the $60 million owed on insurance premiums, $60 million. We are still negotiating, Mr. Speaker, the $14 million left in unpaid leases. To this end, Mr. Speaker, I must thank the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, the Acting Financial Secretary, and the hard-working team at the Ministry of Finance for their support and funding in these matters. I must also say that the Attorney General is still navigating some of the arrangements made by the PLP on lease matters, and so I cannot at this time report on them. And so, Mr. Speaker, with nearly $100 million left in unpaid bills and other commitments, we had to go out and do that groundwork and get it done. With that foundation laid, Mr. Speaker, we entered this year, 2018-2019, ready to build on our successes. Productivity and efficiency were the focus of my ministry, knowing how important it is to immediately address all outstanding matters. It was a major priority for us to determine ways to increase the output of matters and bring matters to completion so that they could be returned to their respective ministries. Human resources and human resource management issues. And Mr. Speaker, I want you to listen to these numbers carefully because they will definitely reflect what our government, this government's commitment is to the public service. And it will show directly how important it is to us about meeting the needs of the persons who work for the government. And I say to all individuals in here and who can hear my voice, you could compare and contrast not only the performance of this government, but look at its commitment and compare and contrast it to the PLP. Today, there has been completion of 336 new appointments on temporary month-to-month terms on 12 months probation, 249 appointments to the permanent and pensionable establishment, 422 confirmation and appointment, 1,217 reemployment, and 53 engagements on contract. I'm talking about what we did this year, Mr. Speaker. I'll get to that too. 336 new appointments on temporary month-to-month or 12-month probation. 249 appointments on permanent and pensionable establishment. 422 confirmation and appointments. 1,212 reemployments, and 53 engagements on contract in this year alone. My ministry, along with the hardworking members of staff of the Ministry of the Public Service Commission, have also to date processed 383 promotions. Let me repeat that. This year, 383 promotions. Additionally, 73 matters for reclassification, reassessment have been processed and completed. In total, over 5,700 matters have been processed and completed to date within this year alone. These numbers may seem impressive on their own, Mr. Speaker, but let us take a moment to understand what they actually represent. Last year, I was able to boast that the F&M government promoted nearly 1,300 hardworking public officers within the administration. Within the administration first year. Let me say that again. Last year, the F&M government promoted nearly 1,300 hardworking public officers within the administration's first year. A number, Cat Island, which more than doubled the amount accomplished by the previous administration in their entire 5 years.
Wow.
Is that what we're doing for Bahamians?
The Public Service Commission have numbers that are indisputable.
Wow.
Every single promotion, every single recommendation that has gone before them. And what was just, the statement that was just made, in fact, so that I could clarify it for all Bahamians, is that we promoted more persons in the public service in 1 year than the PLP did in 5 years.
I'll be right back.
In 1 year. We didn't stop there, Mr. Speaker. We didn't stop there, but yes, they believe in Bahamians, but got to take what Senator Mitchell says. We want the power. We ain't worrying about the people. And so, Mr. Speaker, in addition to those persons that we have promoted in this very short period, we are adding 383 more promotions this year to date. This shows our commitment to reward the outstanding workers in the public service who boost the government's productivity and get the job done. So I want to say this to public officers. And this is not a political statement. It's just a truly factual statement. You got to make a judgment as to which government you want to support. I think if I was still a public officer, I'd support the government that is prepared to support me. And so if I promote, as we did, more persons in 1 year than they did in 5, and then before the commission to date, there's 383 more promotions, and we ain't half there yet. shows our commitment in the human element, shows our commitment to the hardworking public officers. We are prepared to reward them for performing. Oh, of course. I export. Cat Island just said I'm asking public officers to support me. No, I'm asking public officers to support persons who are supporting them. It ain't got nothing to do with me. It's got something to do with look at the persons who are supporting you or who are supporting you and your productivity or rewarding you for your hard work. Not, as Pine Ridge said, that look at what they do, not what they say. Mr. Speaker, we are boosting productivity within the various ministries by ensuring that staff levels remain consistent. To combat the roughly 450 persons who left the public service last year, 249 appointments to the permanent and pensionable establishment, and over 300 new appointments on probation on temporary month-to-month to fill the gaps were made by the public service. My ministry also re-engaged some 1,217 persons, bringing the total to 1,600 since coming to office. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, 5,700 matters have been processed and completed by this ministry to date. And if you want to put the number in percentage, this number represents an increase of 220%, an increase of 220% over the previous administration in 1 year. This upcoming year, Mr. Speaker, it is proposed that there will be 4 assessment exercises for the ranks of First Assistant Secretary, Assistant Secretary, and the executive level and clerical levels will also do their assessment. Having regular assessments exercise boosts the morale for hardworking public officers, as this allows for future career advancement. This government, the Free National Movement government, intends to give workers every opportunity to advance themselves and to be productive in the workplace. Indeed, that is why we say, Mr. Speaker, we are the people's government. Mr. Speaker, as with any construction project, it is of utmost importance to utilize the best building blocks. As we continue to build a better public service, personal development is key to achieving this lofty goal. We encourage development through assisting public officers who take the initiative to upgrade themselves through our in-service training award, the INSTA committee, for example. And for the public service as a whole, by the Public Service Center for Human Resource Development, or PSHARD. Mr. Speaker, matters falling within the purview of the in-service training awards include the grant of in-service training awards, unpaid study leave, educational loans, special leave for academic purposes, and remuneration, such as lump sum payments in accordance with Article 28 of the Bahamas Public Service Union Agreement. To date, 107 of the 142 recommendations received by the ministry were processed, with the remainder currently being reviewed or were just recently submitted for review by the INSTA Selection Committee. Public Service Center for Human Resources Development, Mr. Speaker, can also boast of many successes during the past budget period. Despite being relocated from the jail center on Blake Road, they still managed to host 20 different training seminars. These seminars impacted over 500 public officers, especially those within the new lunch and learn format. Mr. Speaker, the lunch and learn format are critical, Mr. Speaker, because it shows a commitment on both sides. Commitment by those persons who take their lunch. While on lunch, they attend a seminar put on by the Ministry of Public Service. And so 500 individuals, public officers, were impacted by this program, and I commend them for doing the good work. Mr. Speaker, while we place great emphasis on training and developing and improving the current staff complement in the public sector, the people's budget in 2019-2020 also make provisions for the future. $8 million has been allocated for new hires throughout the service, with an additional $3 million embarked especially for the recruitment of college graduates. Mr. Speaker, let me just stop there and speak to this program of college graduates, because this is a critical program introduced by the Minister government. And they say it's critical because it shows a real human connection and a human commitment to the next generation of leaders. The young Bahamians who go to the U.S. or go to UB become qualified, and the difficulty they have in finding a job. And so we have engaged a program that is geared towards identifying 200 individuals who have taken advantage, who have gone to college, who have come out with a bachelor's degree or master's degree. We say to them, we're going to hire 200 of you because we know that you're committed, because you have demonstrated that you want to learn and you want to help us build this country. Mr. Speaker, that's separate and apart from the person who ordinarily wants to get in the service. That's a huge commitment to the youth of our country, Mr. Speaker. That's a fervent commitment by this government to the next generation. And as time goes on, Mr. Speaker, the young Bahamians will see that this government is totally committed to their development. And that is why I pause to say to young Bahamians who are qualified, go to the Ministry of Public Service, fill out your applications, because the government is prepared to commit, and is committed to hiring 200 of you to serve its public. That strategy, Mr. Speaker, we believe is going to have the effect of, in the public service, certainly of replacing individuals. Approximately 400 persons retire from the public service every year. And if we put a program in place where we could identify 200 Bahamians who are qualified and strategically place them in the public service, we will do better. And Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons we're putting them on contract is because we say to them, listen, we know if you come through the service have a beginning salary that may not look good to you. We say that we know you may not be a career public officer, but we will put you in a space where we will encourage you to do just that, where we'll take 200 qualified Bahamians and strategically place them in ministries where they're qualified to work. So if you have a degree in meteorology, for example, you don't have to worry about it. We're going to place you in the med department. We're going to find a way, Mr. Speaker, to strategically place these individuals. And this year, $3 million has been earmarked to do just that. When you build on a firm foundation, Mr. Speaker, you must also make provisions for expansion. The vision for a better public service we are building must continue, and it must include the youth. That is why we've embarked on such a program. Mr. Speaker, accommodations is always a major issue in the Ministry of Public Service. And so I say to all those ministries and departments in New Providence and Grand Bahama, continue to do good, continue to take advantage and make your living and working space better, and we will try to accommodate you wherever possible, but we can't meet all of your needs. And I thank you in advance for for putting up with some of the conditions in some of the spaces. And so, Mr. Speaker, this year, we were able to relocate the following agencies. One, compliance, the Insurance Securities Commission, from the Charlotte House to the UBS building on East Bay Street, Department of Labor in Freeport to the Region Center. The Immigration Department obtained additional space on Hawkins Hill. Bahamas National Geographic Information System Center from the Lands and Surveys building to the Pilot House. Drug Council from the Victoria Gardens to the Bahama Islands Cooperative Credit Union building. Department of Education Superintendent's Division, Security Administration, the building on Nassau Street, and General Post Office from East Hill Street to the Town Center Mall. And so, Mr. Speaker, as we continue our pledge and our commitment to make the environment of Bahamian workers better, our commitment is extraordinarily clear, and we will continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, I began my presentation debate by speaking to unions, negotiations, and labor relations. And so I could just report that the government of Bahamas is currently at the table with 3 of our unions: the National Insurance Board, the Bahamas Public Service Union, and the Bahamas Union of Teachers. I can say that meetings are continuing and will continue until every agreement is signed. We also look forward, Mr. Speaker, to maintaining a good relationship, a good working relationship with the union and all the unions in the public service. And I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to convey my thanks to the union leaders and the executives and members of each union for working with us during the 2018-2019 budget year. And as I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, I am holding to the commitment that I would not comment and make public our commitment to what we will advance to the union, because I'm guided by the president of Bahamas and the BPSU, who said that he wants to negotiate those numbers to the table, and he wants to hear it first. So as soon as those negotiations are completed, Mr. Speaker, the public service will know what they will get. Mr. Speaker, I take great pride in reporting on the success of the National Job Creation and Skills Enhancement Program, formerly called the 52 Weeks Program. Unlike the previous administration, who only handed out short contracts, Mr. Speaker, and I would submit that small contracts to the connected few. You know, I spoke in this place earlier about contracts issued by the PLP for 3 and 6 months. And those 6 months included January to June 2017. For 3 months include April, May, and June 2017. And then, Mr. Speaker, having issued those short-term contracts, when those contracts expired and individuals, their work was done, they turned around and said, we fired these people. Imagine that. They after them fired them. You know? And it's the opposite of a lie. And so, Mr. Speaker, like I said earlier, I saw in there was something that was sent to me by one of my colleagues, which suggested that our national empowerment program that we sent home everyone. It is promoted by no one other than Senator Fred Mitchell again today. Well, he was sent home last election, Fox Hill, and I submit he can get sent home again. But you know, he over 65. He should be retired. Okay. And so, Mr. Speaker.
They're getting a new team.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to speak briefly on this program that engaged 1,000 persons in the Bahamas. And what we did this year, Mr. Speaker, was amazing, in that individuals were sent to BTVI and the Ministry of Education, so that they got an element of classroom learning by their partnership with the Ministry of Education. They got a paid internship. They had the ability to learn the construction trade, the plumbing trade, the electrical trade, the welding trade, cosmetology, hospitality, and fashion and design, business and information technology. All this, Mr. Speaker, free of charge from the Free National Movement government. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we paid them to go to school. We said to them, you go to BTVI, learn this trade, and we will pay you. That is a program, Mr. Speaker, introduced by this government that is unmatched. Mr. Speaker, another element of the program was done by the National Training Agency, where they provided soft skills training. And so I commend the Minister with responsibility for labor, who has responsibility for national training, who allowed our students and our workers to participate in their program. And these internships that they had in this ministry, the internship that they had, Mr. Speaker, allowed for individuals to go to work, to get a job, to work in the hospitality industry and other industries, Mr. Speaker. And so this program, Mr. Speaker, we feel is so important. This program of empowering Bahamians and giving them an opportunity to learn a trade, to enhance their skills, is so critical. And it's so important that the Ministry of Finance thought it necessary to roll this program over. So all those persons in the program who are performing, again, I say to you, do your job, do your work, and the government will take care of you. Mr. Speaker, the Public Service also took time to celebrate the officers who contribute to the building of our nation during the 18th National Public Service Week, held under the theme Igniting Change for Future Generations. It was the largest ever celebration of public officers. Retirees with at least 25 years of service from 2016 was celebrated. 25 years of service from 2016 to 2018 were honored by Her Excellency Governor General at Government House. This gala event attracted families and friends from all over the Bahamas. One of the exceptional workers, Dr. Lester Giddens, from the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, was crowned the Public Service Officer of the Year. A new feature was added to the celebrations last year. A mock parliament debate involving every government department was engaged. And Mr. Speaker, I took the opportunity to sit into that parliament and listen to public officers, and you got a sense of where the government was and what we were doing by the debate. I publicly would like to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for making the House of Assembly available for this event and a training session, but also for allowing this debate to be aired on the Parliamentary channel. And I look forward to you allowing us to do that in the future. Mr. Speaker, the government has a vision. We're building the public service using the pillars of productivity, efficiency, and staff development. This budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020 provides a blueprint for my ministry to follow. And with the help of the Almighty God, we can see this vision and make it a reality. Therefore, I'm proud to say that we support this budget, and to say, Minister of Finance, you did a good job. May God continue to bless the people of these Bahama Islands. May God continue to pour his blessings on the most honorable Prime Minister as he attempts to wipe the tears from the eyes of every single Bahamian. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in this place on the grace and unmerited favor of Yahweh Elohim, the Lord of life, for in him we live, move, and have our being. Mr. Speaker, King Solomon was the wisest man who has ever lived, and no one after him has possessed such wisdom. This most wise gentleman wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, where he spoke about all that he had experienced in this life, and how he went to parties, wine and women, had a good time, and how he amassed great wealth but couldn't take it with him. How he ended up with 300 wives, 700 concubines, sweethearts, and could not find any fulfillment in all of that. Mr. Speaker, our chaplain last week spoke about this. Mr. Speaker, at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, at the end of Solomon's life, he summed it up this way. And he said that this is the total and full and whole responsibility of man. He says in chapter 12, verse 13 and 14, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole, not half, whole duty of man. For God shall bring into judgment every secret thing, whether it be good or bad, our thoughts, our intentions, as to whether it be evil. Mr. Speaker, because there's going to be a day where our thoughts and intentions and the inclinations of our hearts and actions are judged, it is wise for all of us to continuously undertake self-audits to ensure our thoughts and intentions are good. Mr. Speaker, in regards to our thoughts and our intentions, I've heard in this place the conversation about the poor, and a number of persons have gotten up and spoken about our love or lack thereof. Love or lack thereof is based on my interpretation during this debate, but I want the Bahamian people to hear me and to be on guard when individuals speak about their love and concern for the poor in the future. Mr. Speaker, I am not imputing impure motives to anyone in this place because Rule 33, Section 17 says that we're not supposed to do that in this place. But I have come here today with what I believe is a teachable moment from history.
All right.
Mr. Speaker, his story. Mr. Speaker, Judas Iscariot was a man of influence. He was the banker, the accountant. He was the treasurer of the disciples of Jesus. And I do believe that all of us in here are keepers of the public purse. We are the treasurers and accountants of the Bahamian people in that we pass this budget. In John chapter 12, verses 1 and 7, it reads, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here, a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Yes, North Abaco, it is a sermon. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with Jesus. Then Mary took a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one disciple, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor?
Like he's so concerned about the poor.
It was worth a year's wages. Yeah. Judas did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a morally challenged man. He was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. Wow. Mr. Speaker.
It's the problem of the cookie jar.
Wow. For the love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6:10, for money answers everything. Ecclesiastes 10:19, and by their fruits you shall certainly know them. Matthew 7:15 and 20. So for all of us, let our thoughts and our intentions be pure in regards to the poor, and not political posturing in this place. Selah.
Don't forget the 30 pieces Judas carried.
Most certainly did. I have heard it also said during this debate that this budget has no vision, lacks vision. In differing, I say that it is vision and shared values that binds this free national movement together. We know and understand that where there is no vision, the people perish, Proverbs 29 and 18. We know that vision is the end destination, where we intend to go as a government. Mr. Speaker, the good book says that we are to write the vision down and make it plain on tablets. And whoever reads it will run with it. And if we act on it, it will surely come to pass. It shall not disappoint. Habakkuk 2 and 2. Mr. Speaker, the last time I checked, we wrote the vision.
We have a vision.
I looked at our manifesto.
Yes.
It says F&M continuing its transformation, socio-economic growth agenda for the 21st century. Mr. Speaker, we put it in the speech from the throne. Yes. Ably read from this little book by the Honorable Governor General. Mr. Speaker, the last time I checked, we put a budget together. All end destination for all to see.
All tied into one.
Yep.
Mr. Speaker, money answers everything. And as the Deputy Prime Minister said, it takes into consideration the National Development Plan. Yes. Mr. Speaker, the good book says that money answers everything. This budget for us, the government, is irrefutable proof of us putting money to our continued committed vision to rescue the Bahamian economy. And yes, poor people. We have a vision of food security. We have put measures in place in the budget relative to BAMSI, farmers and fishers. Mr. Speaker, our vision being fulfilled. We have a vision of energy security. We have made allocation for renewable solar energy and new generation equipment for BPL. We intend, Mr. Speaker, to solarize the family islands and our public schools. Mr. Speaker, our vision being fulfilled. Our vision of social transformation, a renaissance in the over-the-hill communities. Our heritage community is being pursued in this budget. Tax incentives for residents. Businesses are still in place. Cleanup campaigns are still underway. Southern Recreation Ground, the last time I checked, is still under construction. Mr. Speaker, our vision being fulfilled. Our vision of a highly educated and vocationally trained society is being further pursued. Free tuition for students at UB in the fall, in September, and continued free tuition for BTVI is in this budget. Mr. Speaker, our vision being fulfilled. Our vision, Mr. Speaker, our vision to assist the poor and economically vulnerable is being further pursued. Zero rate of VAT on bread basket items, on electricity bills under $300 and water and sewage bills under $50, as well as reduction on custom duties on certain items in the budget. Mr. Speaker, the last time I checked, our vision being fulfilled. Our vision of more transparency, more accountability in how we deal with the finances of our country is being pursued through the Fiscal Responsibility Act, passed in this Parliament, which requires us to have a quarterly report relative to how the nation is doing, not just a mid-year budget review, Mr. Speaker. The Act mandated that last year's budget deficit could not be more than 1% of GDP, 1.8% of GDP, which we did. This year's budget deficit had to be 1% of GDP, which we did. And next year's overall budget deficit will be no more than 0.5% of GDP, and eventually to a balanced budget. In order to achieve this feat, we have to bring our spending in line and simultaneously grow the economy, which incidentally grew last year, Mr. Speaker, by 1.6%. And I do believe will grow by an even larger number this year. Mr. Speaker, that is our vision being fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, we have a vision, Mr. Speaker, yet to be achieved, and that is that of our capital spending in the budget being larger than the $372 million interest that we pay on our direct national debt. Mr. Speaker, I believe if our history is any indication of our capacity to achieve, the Bahamian people can look forward to seeing that feat achieved in a future budget. In this budget, we have allocated, I think, some $207 million to capital works. We have accomplished goals towards our vision. Mr. Speaker, some in part, some in full. Stay tuned, and as they say in the church, the best is yet to come, and the half has never yet been told. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to move to constituency matters now. Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded of another scripture.
Go ahead.
No apologies, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead.
I can only be who I am. I grew up in the church, having to memorize the book. And as Ezekiel says, it's just like fire shut up in my bones, Mr. Speaker. Jeremiah in chapter 29, verse 11 wrote, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord.
Oh, yes.
Plans to do you good and not evil.
Not to hurt you.
Plans for a future and a hope."
Yes.
It is God speaking to Israel, and I have used it as my statement of purpose for the constituency of Bamboo Town. Mr. Speaker, when I ran in 2012 and in 2017, I said to the people of Bamboo Town that I know the plans I have for you. Plans to do you good and not evil. Plans for a future and a hope. And I said to Bamboo Town, Bamboo, it's about you. Mr. Speaker, I've not lost sight of that. And I've asked the people of Bamboo Town never to lose sight of it either, for them to remind me of it constantly. Indeed, that is why I come into this place, into these Hallows halls. And I say again, Bamboo, baby, it's about you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, we've done an awful lot of work, and I take this opportunity to say, at this time, a happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers in Bamboo Town and the entire Bahamas. I hope you enjoyed your crab and rice. Mr. Speaker, I certainly enjoyed mine. Mr. Speaker, moving along, right along after that sermon, let me offer my condolences to the families of R.A. Ramming and Blair John, while I offer condolences to families of my constituents. 31-year-old Abel Seaman Kennedy Carroll Storr Jr. of Taylor Drive, Bamboo Town. 96-year-old Clyde Dean Gardner of Seven Hills. 84-year-old Vera Smith of Jones Heights. 29-year-old Ashanti C. Hall of Bamboo Town, and 80-year-old James Smith of Kennedy Subdivision. Surely, there are others in my constituency, Mr. Speaker. For all of their families, I pray that the God of compassion, the God of all comfort, in his infinite mercy and love, provides peace in their circumstances. May the souls of the faithfully departed rest in peace, as perpetual light shine on them as they rise in glory. Mr. Speaker, I offer congratulations to my constituent, the National Teacher of the Year winner, Ms. Waynette Bethel Hannah, as well as her parents, who are also my constituents. Mr. Wayne Bethel, who works at the Port Department and runs a very successful construction company, Nassau Construction, and her mother, Ms. Glendina Bethel, accountant, Ministry of Social Services. I congratulate them. Mr. Speaker, in Bamboo Town, we have sponsored a number of programs, summer school programs, summer science programs, and entrepreneurship programs through Mr. Malcolm Folks. Mr. Speaker, we have partnered with the Ministry of National Security and our National Neighborhood Watch program in Bamboo Town to ensure the safety and security of the residents of Bamboo Town. Mr. Speaker, for the record, my constituency office is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and every Thursday at 3 p.m. I'm in my constituency office meeting with my constituents. Mr. Speaker, Bamboo Town is a progressive group of communities. When I sought re-election to that area, flooding was a significant challenge for residents, due in part to unscrupulous individuals who allegedly stole the metal grills off the top of drainage wells, resulting in a lot of wells filling up with silt. With the cooperation of the Minister of Public Works, we are securing improvements of the drainage systems in various areas of the constituency. Drainage wells on Sapodilla Boulevard, around the Kennedy Park, and at the entrance to Gamble Heights are functioning well, and their maintenance cleaning has been ongoing. The drains at the rear of Super Value by All Saints Church require either the road to be lifted or repositioning of the wells to get the effective hydraulic head. Mr. Speaker, our speed control program has added to the safety of the streets of Bamboo Town. The road bumps have slowed the pace of vehicular traffic through the residential area, which is used as shortcuts by impatient motorists who gives no thoughts to folks who may be crossing or playing near the streets. Mr. Speaker, I also thank my colleague Minister of the Environment for his attention to Bamboo Town. The increase and on-time collection of household garbage has provided tremendous relief for residents. Our cleanup campaigns have been successful, and our efforts will be sustained in the next fiscal year. We are happy with our derelict vehicle removal program and look forward to the new initiative that the Prime Minister spearheads of this $50 for owners for the removal of derelict vehicles in the over-the-hill community. I am hoping the PM will extend that to the entire island of New Providence. Mr. Speaker, we continue to have great challenges in the area of Dorsetville near Resurrection Catholic Church and the community next to Zion Baptist Church on Zion Boulevard. Both were cleaned the other day by me, and 2 days later, bulk waste was deposited there again. I find it hard to believe that the people who live in that area are the perpetrators. No. I therefore urge residents to be watchful and report any and all incidents of dumping, and I urge those that are responsible to take to properly disposing of their waste. Mr. Speaker, if I was a betting man, I would likely win a wager that the culprits were paid to take those items to the New Providence landfill, but did not do so. Mr. Speaker, we will implement countermeasures to catch these culprits and seek their prosecution in our environmental courts. So perpetrators be forewarned. Mr. Speaker, this government believes in the empowerment of people, not simply locating jobs. This is why I fully support our implementation of one of our most impactful initiatives, the Small Business Development Center, the SBDC. Yes. We are breaking the cycle of dependency on government, facilitating growth and expansion, as the Minister of Finance communicated to this House during his budget presentation. I urge my constituents, business persons, who are not members to join the Bamboo Town Business Bureau, BBB, to take advantage of the offerings of the SPDC that the fund provides in grants, equity, and loans. We have also held business seminars for the edification of the members of the BBB, which was conducted by Mr. Malcolm Folks and Associates. And I want to thank the members of the BBB who contribute every year to my back to school program, which incidentally is the largest on the island. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to congratulate all of the Bamboo Town students who've graduated from high school. In life, academic success is not achieved by all, but it's important that all find value and work. So for those who need additional training classes to graduate, we will implement an after-school program that constituents have been calling for. This program will seek to shore up academics and to promote trade works to bolster the workforce. Mr. Speaker, we intend also to build what is known as a Fab Lab in conjunction with MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We will do this in the building next to my constituency office. Working people need higher levels of education to tackle the technological demands of all occupations as we enter the fourth industrial age. And this Fab Lab will assist in that development. You can Google Fab Foundation, which is one word, for those interested in more information about what a Fab Lab is. I think you will find it very instructive. And Mr. Speaker, this is an initiative I'd like to spearhead. I'm also going to speak to the Minister of Education about it because really it's a very forward-leaning introduction for all to science and fabrication for really the 21st and 22nd century, really. And so, Mr. Speaker, hopefully I will be able to get some of my colleagues to be a part of this as well. Mr. Speaker, this summer Bamboo Town will again host its annual basketball tournament among polling divisions and a science camp to encourage students interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM subjects. Mr. Speaker, our backyard farming initiative will bear fruit this budget season as we begin our constituency farm and greenhouse at Carlton Francis Primary School and at our constituency office. For Bamboo Town constituents who may feel perplexed, hold firm, for you are next. Be assured, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, be assured, Bamboo, it is still about you. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the Ministry of Transport and Local Government, Head 40. Mr. Speaker, following the Minister of Finance budget communication, my ministry and its agency heads digested the template to establish the following guidelines: maintain fiscal discipline, maximize revenue and limit borrowing, modernize and improve revenue collection, eliminate low priority spending, greater responsiveness to the public, and adhere to a strict process for procurement of goods and services. For my ministry's part, we are excited and are busy strategizing ways and implementing policies that embrace new ideals, understanding that we are committed to the general principles of accountability, responsibility, stability, transparency, and intergenerational fairness and inclusive growth. For its administration, Mr. Speaker, my ministry has been allocated just $9.6 million, which is relatively the same level of funding when compared to the closing fiscal year 2018-2019. We are guided by the principle that we must do more with less and look forward to making the new system of accountancy work with public managers having greater visibility and control over budgeting and spending, lending to more effective human resource planning. My ministry has shifted its gears to focus on long-term policy planning and effective governance. Notwithstanding our immediate cost-saving measures, my ministry will actively pursue initiatives and proposals that will enhance value for money, realizing more savings and improving our service efficiency. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the road traffic. Mr. Speaker, which is here at 54. Pointedly, I turn to the road traffic department, which has been allocated just $4.6 million, representing around some $600,000 down from what was allotted in fiscal year 2018-2019, some $5.2 million. Under this administration, we are undertaking to ensure the mechanism is in place to facilitate the Bahamas' thrust towards robust economic growth and record employment levels. A key component for this is coordinating steps in corporate transportation planning, identifying the right policy mix, and developing our infrastructure with consideration for the environment, public health, and climate change. Fundamentally, Mr. Speaker, it is about improving the quality of the life of our citizens. The Road Traffic Department, Mr. Speaker, projected revenue collection in fiscal year 2018-2019 as to be just under $36 million. That is what we projected to bring in. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to announce that that figure was exceeded by the department, which brought in nearly $40 million as of March of this year.
None of it been missing.
And, Mr. Speaker, we know that there's always a whole lot more revenue that comes in April and May, because that is the franchise month when all of the taxis and liveries and bus public service persons have to ensure that their vehicles are licensed. And they pay their franchise fee. So we're looking for that figure to be somewhere probably around $46 million, which will be about $10 million over what we had projected for this fiscal year.
Wow.
Mr. Speaker, peace comes with order. Thanks to the Ministry of Finance, the Road Traffic Department will soon be rendered cashless, so that department, which is among the, largest generators of revenue, will have the capacity to take on present and increased work in terms of volumes and variations. Once this process has been completed, we should find that along with the Transport Management System, the TMS, the department will be hard to outpace in respect of revenue collection. This, of course, will lend to more efficiency and overall transparency. Mr. Speaker, I want the Bahamian people to know something that they've been asking for quite some time, that we will pursue an additional revenue measure initiative that's going to take place within the Road Traffic Department this fiscal year. We'll do so, Mr. Speaker, with the introduction of specialty organizational license plates, personalized vanity plates,
Yes.
novelty tourism plates, and general issued plates. We will achieve this by upgrading and enhancing the license plate production facility at the prison by a capital injection of close to $900,000. And Mr. Speaker, the projections is that we should be able to, with this new revenue stream, that we should be able to garner probably another $5 to $6 million for the public treasury. Mr. Speaker, our land transportation system is highly dependent on private transportation. In some households, there is a vehicle to every adult resident, while our arterial system of streets have progressed to accommodate increased volumes of traffic. We all know the need for sound interventions for safe, reliable public transportation. The present high level of cars on New Providence roads is a concern, given the effect of air quality, delays in journey times due to congestion, particularly at peak hours, and loss of natural areas to make way for extensions and building of new roads. Mr. Speaker, over the years, the Transportation Policy and Planning Unit, the TPPU, has worked on several important traffic management and road safety initiatives, including the unification of the public bus system for New Providence, the development of a road safety strategy, and an action plan and a review of the Road Traffic Act. Unfortunately, when the New Providence Road Improvement Project ended, the Transportation Policy and Planning Unit lost some of its resources and funding. Today, the TPPU is refocused, and that started under the former minister, once again, on implementing important road safety initiatives. One of these initiatives is the Junior Road Safety Program, which is deployed in all government primary schools in New Providence and several family islands. It was pushed by my predecessor, as I said earlier, the Honorable Frankie Campbell. It is envisioned that this program will be in the primary schools of all of our family islands by the end of the year. Mr. Speaker, I am sure that we would all agree that our children should learn about road safety at an early age so that it will become a part of a way of life for them. I am happy to report that this program is doing just that. The children are learning about road safety through messages posted on their road safety notice boards, poems, raps, plays, and road safety assemblies. To ensure that, that programs like this are sustained, financial provisions have been made in this budget. I also thank my colleague ministers of Education and Health for allowing their ministries to assist in making this road safety program a success. Mr. Speaker, another road safety initiative that requires mentioning is the work towards updating of the Road Traffic Act. We have decided to bring incremental change to this law as opposed to the all-inclusive, full-scale change package that was suggested by the members for Engliston. Mr. Speaker, my ministry is reviewing the current act as well as a bill that has existed in my ministry for several years. This review is meant to reduce the bill from its present form, which is cumbersome and requires more clarity in some areas, so that it is properly understood by those who will have carriage of its administration. This incremental approach to change is rationalized with the foreknowledge of how an all-inclusive change exposed government in the case of the Planning and Subdivision Act. And I want the Bayman people to remember that, Mr. Speaker. Incremental change allows us to build capacity to enforce new provisions. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that with the new Road Traffic Amendment number 2, 2018 having been passed, an incremental change, the same should come into force shortly with the appointed day notice, which will be signed before the end of June. So the bill will become law before the end of June. This amendment will prevent road users from using electronic devices while driving with open alcoholic beverages, and producing their driver's license when requested to do so. Mr. Speaker, through you, I wish to advise that this is just the beginning. We intend to introduce stiffer penalty for reckless driving, careless driving, and causing death by reckless driving. Mr. Speaker, there are too many cases of killing in the course of dangerous driving. In most cases, the offenders have been fined $10,000. We must look in the mirror and ask ourselves if the punishment fits the offense. We intend to work closely with the Royal Bahamas Police Force to rigorously enforce all traffic laws. I wish to assure the general public that if you do not obey the laws, you will surely pay. Mr. Speaker, I am very pleased to announce that the Ministry of Transport and Local Government has agreed in principle with the United Public Transportation Company Limited to a unified public transportation project for Route 17. Mr. Speaker, the public transit service will operate along the fixed Route 17 according to a predetermined schedule. The bus service will be provided by modern, clean buses, and users will board buses at designated bus stops or at other locations as directed by the ministry along the route. The service will operate 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., with buses operating every 15 minutes. 5 buses are projected to operate this pilot service based on either a 60-minute or 75-minute round-trip time. A fare will be charged for all trips taken on the transit service. The fare structure is applicable to each one-way trip and applies to all customers. All fares are by exact change, cash, on a pay-as-you-enter basis. Fares must be deposited by the customer into the fare box on the buses. Bus drivers shall not handle or deposit fares on behalf of customers, except when the customer is unable to do so due to a disability. My ministry will reserve the right to alter the fare levels for this pilot project, the fare structure, to introduce fare zones, and to offer fare reductions or to introduce alternate fare payment methods, tickets or passes, as we deem appropriate. This bus unification pilot, Mr. Speaker, will be launched next week. Whoa. After 3 years.
Oh, where's Angleton?
So Angleton has been calling it for it, and she can have it.
Fix it.
Mr. Speaker, the Transportation Management System, TMS, is functioning well, somewhat so, within the design parameters given by the former administration. As it has afforded the Road Traffic Department the ability to be more transparent and effective in meeting its mandate. The TMS is the electronic program that is now being used in road traffic. However, there are a few drawbacks that persist. Challenges are experienced when we are at our highest volume of customer service, with system responsiveness lagging and a timely response to troubleshooting queries by Data Talk. However, Mr. Speaker, Data Talk has come in and is working as a part of its contractual service to mitigate the issues that the department would have during operational hours. In addition, Mr. Speaker, every island is not yet connected to the system, and this for us is unacceptable. By law, each licensed driver, customer, no matter where he or she resides in the Bahamas, no matter where the license is issued, is entitled to the same level of service. And Mr. Speaker, we're seeking to have that done as soon as possible. As a result, Mr. Speaker, in the near future, we will provide TMS and relevant training on the islands of Grand Bahama, Abaco, Exuma, and Eleuthera. There are provisions being made in order to facilitate Andros, Bimini, Cat Island, and Long Island. The southern islands are still manual, but it is the objective of the department to put an end to all manual paper driver's license by the end of this September. Mr. Speaker, the Road Traffic Department has drastically improved from the services that it offered some 2 or 3 years ago. However, another May, with long lines and frustrated customers at the business and franchise section, has taught us valuable lessons. Mr. Speaker, going forward, therefore, the department will stagger the Public Service Month and will invite franchise members to register in alphabetical order, with sections of that alphabetical order being assigned to particular months of the year. This will lend order to the section, as they would be more prepared to assist customers due to the reduced volume of work required. Bahamians will remember that we used to experience the same long line effect for vehicle registration until government decided that we would register vehicles via the owner's birthday. An F&M government did it then, and an F&M government is going to do it now.
Yes. Progress. Yes. Sound like you have a vision.
It's written down.
Mr. Speaker, there's a final set of issues within the Road Traffic Department that I must touch on briefly.
Say that again.
As a matter of fact, it's in the daily papers today. They center on the taxi cab union in particular. The Taxi Cab Union has brought it to the attention of my ministry and the Prime Minister that their members' license plates are the same color as private charter bus plates and self-drive cars. It has been said that the private charter buses are providing the same service that law allows exclusively for taxi cabs. Mr. Speaker, my ministry has taken the decision, after consultation with the leader, to cause yellow to be the distinguishing color of taxi cab plates, as it is generally accepted as the color of taxi cabs plates universally and internationally. There's also the challenge of livery cars overtly competing with taxi cabs. There's the complaint that livery cars are on a line sporting fares when the law provides that their services ought to be prearranged. My ministry is dialoguing with all parties to reach an amicable conclusion to this matter. And I see that the Taxi Cab Union and the bus drivers have given us a deadline of July 1st. I can leave that right there. Mr. Speaker, in May of 2017, the Governor General, in her speech from the throne, vision, foreshadowed the government's intention to review and give consideration to the ownership of taxi license plate by persons who have been leasing those plates for many years. This government, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely committed to bringing order to what has been allowed to mushroom into chaos. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, in his wisdom, has established a cabinet subcommittee consisting of 6 ministers, the Attorney General, yours truly, the Honorable Frankie Campbell, the Honorable Denicio de Aguilar, the Honorable Brenson Roll, and the Honorable Dion Folks. We are tasked to make recommendations regarding issues pertaining to recalling of all plates, inactive plates, renewal of franchises, and plates in the estate of. And as the Prime Minister has tasked us to deal with this situation, we will be getting back to the Cabinet before the end of the summer. No more indentured servants.
No more.
All the people could be president.
Mr. Speaker, it is good to know, and I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, it is good to know that on this issue of franchise, there's agreement on both sides of this House. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that I could report that to the Bahamian people. Well, you can't trust them unless they sign it, yeah? Mr. Speaker, I now move to the Post Office Department Head 51.
Talk, man. Talk.
Mr. Speaker, Isaiah 52 and 53, again,
From the valley.
famously describes a mysterious figure in Scripture that scholars dubbed the suffering servant, one that we now know as Yeshua, our Lord. As it turns out, Mr. Speaker, the General Post Office had its suffering servants as well. Oh, Mr. Speaker, for years, the management and staff of the General Post Office was subjected to horrendous working conditions that had threatened to crush their morale. The travailing journey to restore the peace of postal workers was long and fraught with controversy. But this administration, Mr. Speaker, this administration resolved to get it done in the shortest possible time. The condition that postal workers endured were nearly unforgivable, Mr. Speaker. This administration is strictly guided by the tenet that all workers have the right to work in conditions that are safe, healthy, and ensure human dignity. Mr. Speaker, both me and the former minister and the Prime Minister begged their pardon and got to work. And at the beginning of May, in this year, in regards to the General Post Office on Eastern Street, the rally cry to the suffering servants in Isaiah 52 went out. The path, go from there to the new town center mall. And on Thursday, the 23rd of last month, I was privileged to witness our Prime Minister declaring the relocated General Post Office open for business in the town center mall after just 8 months. After just 8 months of the decision to relocate there. As the Prime Minister indicated at the opening ceremony, the Postal Service is an essential part of the infrastructure for democracy and must be preserved. And so, Mr. Speaker, we want to just say to all and sundry that more is to come. It's 1 o'clock now. I ain't got half more to go.
Stop right there, that's a good point.
Mr. Speaker, I will stop at this point and come back and begin to deal with the post office when I return at 3 o'clock.
You move it and then move it in the house. Move the house.
Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for St. Anne's.
Speaker, I move that the House to suspend until 3 o'clock today, and when the Honourable Member continue his budget speech.
Mr. Speaker, I second that.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Ordered that the business of this House stand suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.